ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank you to Maciek Jagodziński and organizers for invitation. And I would also at the beginning to notice that I changed a little bit title of my presentation. With time limitation, I have a narrow title, and because I would like to focus mainly on ships and boats connected with the Truso. And thanks to the discoveries and research made by Maciek Jagodziński, we all agree that settlement in Jan Pomorski is a Viking Age trade port situated on Lake Truso in the Slavic Eastern borderland. Due to the fact that Truso was a port, we can expect finds connected with sailing and boat and shipping or shipbuilding. It's important to try to determine what kind of ships go to the port of Truso, where they come from, how much cargo they could carry. But attempts to answer those questions are extremely difficult, primarily because of the lack of preservation of wooden structures on the site. So at the beginning we can analyze written sources and of course Wulfstan report. And from this report we know about the fact that ships from the west reached Truso. The original text describing the voyage by Wulfstan leaves several open questions. One of these unsolved problems is means of transport. There is no evident clue in the text to the type or size of ship, nor to the home port of the ships and its crew. Thus, a survey of 9th-10th century archaeological finds and iconographic evidence of ships in the Baltic is not likely to enable us to answer this question beyond doubt. At the present state of knowledge, based on a very limited number of finds, it is most likely that vessels similar in nature to the Gokstad or Tunis ships, using sail alternating with rowing by numerous oarsmen, were used for the part of the long-distance Baltic trade, which was carried out in Danish or Norwegian Navy ships. They were both well suited for such a voyage, having a length of 20 meters or more, and a wide beam, and crew including 32 oarsmen, and a capacity to carry an estimated 5 to 10 tons of cargo, along with its own provisions. Wulfstan would have been able to feel relatively safe from attacks by pirates while sailing down to the Schlei from Hedeby into the open sea, and from there through the northern Baltic Sea to the narrow passages upriver to Truso. This threat is often mentioned in the written sources, even since Pirates in 1829 interfered with the Ansgar Christian mission to Birka in Sweden. So, in conclusion, we can say that Wulfstan probably used sailing vessels over 50 meters in length, with several crew members. And in the light of experimental archaeology, the nautical part of Wulfstan account proved to be realistic. In 2004, the Viking Ship Museum, together with National Maritime Museum, made an experiment, and using the reconstruction of the 11th century cargo ships, Skuldelev 1, called Otar, sailed from Hedeby to Gdańsk, and the 5 men and 3 women on board covered 390 nautical miles over ground in 4 days, 1 hour and 25 minutes. The swift voyage in the wake of Wulfstan was made possibly by steady westerly wind, which blew during the first 3 days. The travel speed of the trial voyages and the experience made with the rope can be directly compared with Wulfstan account. The direct comparison reveals that Wulfstan Norwegian contemporary author sailed almost as fast as Skuldelev 1 reconstruction. Other description as well as various trial voyages records indicate that his voyage to Hedeby took place under favorable conditions. Judged by the weather situation in total, the trial voyage in 2004 from Hedeby to Gdańsk also took place under similar conditions. Therefore, it appears reasonable to assume that other vessel had the travel speed potential similar to the Skuldelev 1. So we can conclude that Wulfstan's ship might have been a slower vessel, or more likely he was not just unlucky with the wind, or Wollstonecraft may also have taken a little long road. And we are thinking that they may have been political as well cultural advantages in sailing along the southern and eastern coast of Denmark. Wollstonecraft may have enjoyed the same royal and legal protection over the first half of his voyage. In case of trouble, he may also have profited from the fact that language and customs were related to those of Hedeby. It could also be that he preferred to follow a frequent Scandinavian trade route for reasons of protection against pirates and other conveniences, before he turned south to the Pomeranian coast of the Vistula Delta. So, and this ship which were used for this experiment, it's a Skutelev 1 find from the beginning of 11th century called Otar, is a representative of a new ship type that appeared at this time in Scandinavia, the pure sailing vessel. Ships of this kind were specialized for the transport of cargo. Their oars were of limited use and their heavy mass could not be lowered at sea. We don't know whether such vessels were already in use in the Baltic in the 9th century. However, since Wollstonecraft account states that his boat ran under sail the whole way, utter lack of rowing power did not pose problem for the particular voyage. And the Goksat ships of 23 meters length dated to the end of 19th century proves that were larger ships than Skutelev 1 during Wollstonecraft time. And these ships were fully dependent on wind and normally had a smaller crew than the personal carriers. They were very vulnerable when become to attack from old vessels with pirate crews. And we cannot exclude that there's a specialized ship sailed to Truso in the 10th century. But whether these vessels with deep draft 1.3 meters could sail on the Lake Druno? This is a very important question. And in this period, also specialized slender warships are represented by the long and narrow Ladbe and Hedeby wrecks were used. They were built for speed in sheltered waters, under sail, as well as when using the numerous oars, and they had no space for carrying cargo and provision for prolonged period at sea. They could easily cross the Baltic, but were evidently not designed for long and uninterrupted sea voyages. They function, apart from providing prestigious and safe transport for magnates to various meetings, would have been as a means of controlling the sea and securing the trade from land bases, as well as acting as troop transporters in case of war. It cannot be excluded that also those ships sailed to Truso from time to time. And what about archaeological remains of golden ships in Truso? The previous archaeological excavation gave us very unclear picture of the boat building remains found in Truso. During excavation carried out by Maciek Jagodziński in the trench cap, were documented the boat-like objects bordered the lake's former shoreline. Altogether, the remains of at least 9 boat-like objects were uncovered. The dimension as well as their shapes suggest that they could be remains of the hull bottoms. You can see. They were circa 9 to 11 meters in length, circa 2.5 to 3 meters wide. In transversal profile, they had the shape of flat syncline, circa 50 centimeters deep in the lowest part. The group of objects discovered in trench cap probably dates from the first, perhaps a seasonal phase of Truso development dated to 7-8, the early 9th century AD. And at the moment, it's difficult to point the similar finds from the southern Baltic Sea from that period. Scholars in earlier studies were pointed the similarities to the boats discovered in the area of the Vistula lagoons, like for example in Fromborg and Bongard, which all were lost during Second World War. But at present, the wreck from Fromborg appears to show greatest resemblance to ships Tolknisko number 1, 5, and 4, which are dated to the 15th, 17th century, and which were excavated in 80s and in the last decade. Based on the similarity of their construction and the shape of their hull, all of them may be said to belong to one type of craft, built at the local shipbuilding works on the Vistula Lagoon. A comparison made of Fromborg ships with other finds suggests that rather the originating from the Viking period, as previously thought, they dated from the late medieval or post-medieval age. The same situation is in the case of a wreck from Bongard, which was excavated 1895 by Hugo converts. Wreck were moved to Gdańsk and were completely lost during Second World War. Hugo converts dated this wreck to early medieval period on the basis of comparative material. But, for example, recently in Gdańsk were excavated a wreck on the Granada Islands, which the same constructural feature dated to beginning of 14th century. So we can say that most probably both from Bongard is dated to late medieval period. Another group of artifacts are rivets and ropes. And during excavation in Truso, about 300 iron rivets were discovered. They were found within the outlines of the boat-like objects from the trench cap and also in other part of the settlement. They were excavated rivet shafts and rectangular rows, as well as lumps of tar, which might be evidence that boats were repaired and maintained here, and that the damaged boats were disassembled in order to salvage elements that were still serviceable. Those artifacts show that repairs had been carried out to ships or boats at the site, as some rivets had evidently been chiseled over or had their heads or ropes cut off. And the shape of the nails might indicate where the boats had been built. For example, in 1994, Jan Bill, Danish archaeologist, has published a systematic study of finds of Iron Age and medieval Iron Age in ship finds of Northern Europe. According to his analysis, the cross-section is an important diagnostic feature in the centuries up to 12th century. The nails with a round cross-section are found in Scandinavia finds, as well as in finds from around the Irish Sea, whereas square cross-sections are found in all the finds analyses from the regions settled by Slavs, Balts, and Finns. Such clear distribution maps are useful, but Bill's map lasts unchallenged only 8 years, when the Swedish archaeologist Gunilla Larsson published the report Contacts between Central Sweden and Russia indicated by ship remains. And according to her, Jan Bill has based on his conclusion about the nails in Middle Sweden on publication where they seem round shanked. She examined that actual nails and found that in all cases where the nails were uncorroded enough to make it possible to determine the cross-section of the shanks. The shanks in both graves in Middle Sweden have square section. She also studied the actual nails from Plakun and found that there is a great variation of section of the nails in the same grave: square, rhomboid, rectangular, irregular. So this same situation occurs in the case of rivets from Truso. Rivets found in Truso seen in cross-section at oval or quadrilateral shafts. As a conclusion, it could be said that it seems impossible to make any statement regarding so intricate a detail as the profile of nail, unless statistically sufficient amounts of nails in a much better state of preservation will be examined. I would like also to notice that when we compare both like objects from Truso with contemporary finds, there are visible differences, especially with the placement of the rivets and hull proportions. Rivets recorded in the object from Truso were found in irregular clusters, and its number is too small when we compare, for example, from this famous submachines. Also, boat-like objects are wider and shorter in proportion compared with layouts from boat graves from that period. And objects from Truso resemble silhouettes of Slavonic boats from the 12th century. Slavonic boats had a number of characteristic structural features. They were made of oak. In silhouette, they resembled Viking ships, but their cross-section was different. Their bottoms were flat, even though they were made from overlapping planks rooted with moss. Wooden planks between 9 to 30 millimeters long were used to fasten the structure elements rather than iron nails. And the system of fastenings and loopings between the various trades in the planking is an important morphological feature to study in an attempt to identify the various boat building schools. And according to this, iron rivets and a string of wool for caulking routing were employed in the Nordic vessels. And tree nails or wooden pegs and moss routing were employed in West Slav vessels. But at present, we can indicate a number of exceptions to this rule, which came from the present Sweden, present Denmark, and also present Britain. I would like to present one example. There is the reconstruction of the boat based on the timbers found from 11th, 12th century, found during excavation in a lake on the eastland of Gotland. The remains were used as for the reconstruction of the Swedish early medieval boat, and using this boat, Professor Nylén in 80s sailed across the Baltic to Gdańsk and in the southeast direction. But another example would be pegged parts of the planking from wreck called Hedebe II, dated to the end of 10th century. And this wreck represents a local working boat, originally 9-12 meters in length, constructed of materials which were partly new, partly reused or imported. This vessel was constructed in Hedebe Schleswig area. It could have been built by Danes, Slavs or the Saxons. The details of the vessels are not unambiguous, as riveted planking is normally associated with Nordic shipbuilding. This is a very general statement. However, as iron nails or rivets are found in Slavonic vessels, it is in keel, stem, and stern, as well as in the plank scars, whereas small twinels are found in some Scandinavian-built ships, especially in the top strait. Even in some Anglo-Saxon boat finds from London, there are examples of pegged planking. So we can summarize that recorded finds of wooden pegged vessels, since their moderate size, indicates construction for local transportation of goods or people across short distances in the open sea, or along different parts of the coastal and inshore channels. So, we can conclude that during excavation in Truso, two types of vessels were revealed. One first group, there are iron rivets and ropes, which are connected most probably with seagoing ships built, we don't know where, but with specialized craftsmanship of excellent leather, very expensive, high quality materials, and planks were fastened with iron rivets. And we have the second group, outliers of boat-like objects, local working boats built with ordinary or low-level craftsmanship, low quality, cheaper material, with pegged or mixed planking, probably with reused timbers, length up to 12 meters, low brow, shallow bottom, and very often those remains are seen as a character, as a remains of Slavic boats. And of course, there are, I would like to maybe, we can present several proposals to explain so many boats-like objects found during Truso excavation. I present one of them, which are presenting that local working boats were kind of lighters for loading and unloading bigger seagoing ships, which draft was too big to reach Drużno Lake and Truso. We know that approaches to the tributary and Lake Drużno itself were probably very shallow, and deep keels of bigger Scandinavian ships would have caused problems in narrow passages upriver to Truso. And this solution could be the need for the loading and unloading of smaller and flat bottom boats, working boats. So this is one maybe of the hypotheses, and of course the weak point of this is datation, the chronology, which is 6th, 7th, 9th century AD. So this not fit very well with this proposal. But of course, I'm very open for your questions, for your ideas, and I would like to say at the end that we are going to study more the material connected with shipbuilding from Truso in the coming months. Thank you very much for your attention.